I'm John. This is the summary of the class Inventing Empty Knots for Rope Dart. So, the way this class worked is I taught a card game which teaches you how to tangle yourself up. And then from there, I and the students did a joint brainstorm to come up with some, to get from being tangled up into being in an empty knot that you can release cleanly. The two parts of this class are learning that process, and then the empty knots that we happen to invent together I'll also summarize. So, the card game. I have 5 cards for 5 parts of the body. The right side, which covers the entire right leg up into the right armpit. Between the legs, left side, which is the same, and then the 2 shoulders. So, to explain how you use these, the idea is you will draw a pair of these cards, and then you'll cast behind the first one, coming out the second one. So if I were to draw, here I'll do right-handed for now, so I don't confuse you too much. If I were to draw right side to left shoulder, which is the same as right armpit to left shoulder because I combine this entire area, I would get that cast, which is the start of a lot of empty knots that a lot of people know. If I were to do right shoulder to left shoulder, that would just be over the neck. If I were to do right shoulder to left shoulder, that would be over the neck. Right side to between the legs is just under a leg. And, right side to left side, behind the back. So the idea is you can get your basic passes. If I got shoulder to a side, that could even just be around the wrist, around the upper arm. These are all topologically roughly the same. So we combine those, and as you get the combinations, you can play with exactly how you want to make those manifest in their appearance. Now, the idea here is I draw a pair of cards. Let's say I draw those 2. I do that. Then I draw a second pair of cards. Let's say I drew left shoulder to left side, and I do that. And then I find myself in a place where I am tangled up. And then from there, I just start thinking to myself, well, what could I do to not be tangled up? From this one, let's see how well I can do this offhanded. I would realize, hey, if I cast here, there we go, and I have an empty knot. And there's a number of tricks you think about as you're putting these knots together. Simply retracing your steps, with or without holding on to them. So the one I just did, I didn't hold the second loop, but I did hold the first one. As you play with it, you start coming up with ways to turn these things into empty knots, and I don't think I can enumerate them. It's much easier to do in context as you're playing the game. But that's the basic idea, is you use the cards to get yourself tangled up, and then you come up with a way to not be tangled. This is mostly just for fun. It's, changing every class, but based on one of our random draws, I'm going to show you a couple different ways we came up to turn it into an empty knot. So the draw we had was, I'm going to use casting an anchor instead of right and left since I'm left-handed and don't want to confuse you too much. So I cast it under my casting side leg, through my legs, and then I cast it under my anchor side armpit over my casting side shoulder. So, that is our tangle. It's a pretty nasty one. So now, there's a number of things you can do to get yourself out of this. You can do the relatively obvious, which is just retrace both steps. So I go back over the shoulder under the armpit, and then from here I can't actually loop it and re-catch it through my leg because I don't have enough rope left, but I can just do a release under my leg, and that was an empty knot. Now, let's see. So get myself back into the tangle, under the leg, under the armpit. I'm sure there's a more elegant way to get into that, but right now we're mostly worrying just about the links of the knot, the topology of it all. So, another one, this was Blake's solution. Just go back over my neck, and then, I'm really bad at this part, what he came up with is basically, as you're releasing it, you release the knot, and kind of hook it over your shoulder in your way as you wind up to your release under the leg. So basically, the step from the neck to the shoulder, you kind of cheat by doing a big, large circle, which unhooks it over your shoulder, and then you do the leg release before. So it adds up. You get the neck and then the shoulder, which adds up to the shoulder to armpit. And then The last one, which we're still working some of the bugs out of, but I think it's kind of cool. And just to reiterate, these are all things that the class invented as a group. So from here, I do the neck again, but rather than doing the over-the-shoulder trick, I'm going to go into a suicide wrap, and then as the suicide unwraps, I'm going to let it shoot between my legs. So this is why I'm in this deep lunge stance, is so that I can make the suicide go behind my shoulder, but in front of my rear leg. Note that I have my casting side leg forward. So, from there, that looked terrible, but it did in fact unwind. Now we haven't quite figured out the release. It is just shot sideways through my legs, and from there I could catch it with a little practice, from which point I could, cast it out and clean up the rope. Or possibly, with practice, one might be able to, this is a work in progress, get enough velocity to let the through the legs cast carry it out. So I'll do it one more time. Through there. And I lost my momentum, but with practice perhaps we could get a good clean cast out there, perhaps we catch it and throw it. If somebody out there on the internet figures out how to make that a cool looking cast coming out of that, I want to know it, post a reply video. And if I come up with one, I will too. Thanks everybody.